Hello and welcome back to the Diamond Report. It's been a minute since we've both had an opportunity to get together. But again, so Stephen Gall, and once again joined by Cody Miller as we get set to recap what's happened so far for the Blues in 2026 and preview the home opener at Borleski Stadium this coming weekend. But first, Cody, how we doing? It's been a little bit.
I know. We're already 2 or 3 weeks removed from our last joint session here on the Diamond Report. So, yeah, a lot's happened. As you mentioned, not only has Whitman baseball season started, but a bunch of other Whitman's athletic events going on and concluding and still continuing, as well as the women's basketball team making some noise in the conference tournament this past weekend and are on their way to the NCAA Division III tournament. I'm sure you're pretty excited to see that as well from after watching all season with them.
Absolutely, and a tremendous accomplishment, and we are going to sidestep here in just a second to give a big shout out to the Whitman women's basketball program, having won the Northwest Conference Women's Championship this weekend, having taken down the George Fox University Bruins, which we'll be talking more about George Fox later on in the show. But yeah, the women having a chance to take down George Fox and are headed back to the NCAA tournament as the automatic qualifier for the Northwest Conference drawing. They are heading back to Texas as they have a few times now in the last 5 years or so, heading to Abilene, Texas, where host Hardin-Simmons University is going to host. In the first round, actually, the Blues will take on the Claremont Mudscript Stags. So a little West Coast action. It's the Northwest against Southern California, the SCIAC, getting to match up in Texas for the right to advance to the round of 32 and take on likely host Hardin-Simmons University. And then if the women were to advance past the first weekend, then it would be almost all but certain heading off to NYU, where the women of NYU currently hold the longest undefeated streak in NCAA basketball history for either gender in any division. So they've got their sights set high, but man, what an accomplishment that would be. But regardless, the women heading down to Texas this weekend, and then yeah, hoping for a chance to go head back to New York.
I did see that NYU team that is entering undefeated, like you said. I believe if I heard right, their last loss was January of 2024.
That sounds
um,
right. Yeah.
after the bracket came out today. So that's going to be quite the battle for anyone who goes up against that NYU team. But just again, congratulations to Michelle Ferenz, her staff, and the team for winning the Northwest Conference tournament. I believe it was the fourth and fifth in 5 years for them. So just another great job by Michelle and that staff, and we'll be following along for the team when they make it down to Texas.
We sure will. And then also just we want to again make sure we give love. You mentioned there's been a lot going on, and that is the truth. In addition to women's basketball heading to the NCAA tournament, we've got men's and women's tennis are in full swing. Both are off to hot starts, and the game ops in me is sort of already preparing to host men's and women's conference tennis tournaments here in about a month and a half. As both teams are certainly en route right now to likely make that a reality. And then the lacrosse program, lacrosse opened up their season this past Friday, taking down the Whitworth Pirates in early action, technically a non-conference game, but against the conference rival, and won their home opener as they get their season. We're preseason tied for first in a pick with George Fox again. As we find a way, there is a Bruin theme to this episode. Is the George Fox Bruins on the lacrosse program side have a history. They have not lost a Northwest Conference contest since lacrosse began sponsored in the Northwest Conference, but this might be the year the Blues get it done. So a lot of hopes, a lot of expectations, and they came out looking pretty sharp on Friday. So lots of good stuff happening across the Whitman Athletic Department. But first, Cody, we're here to talk about baseball, but before we fully jump into it, we do want to make sure we mention out a couple of things. The first one is we want to make sure that everyone knows you can visit www.whitmanblues.com for all your up-to-date information on Whitman Athletics, including current team schedules and student athlete features. You can also follow Whitman Athletics on X, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Likely where hopefully you're watching this on one of those platforms, so you have some familiarity, but it's all available on all of those. And then also a big thanks to the W Club for its support of Whitman student athletes and athletic programs. The W Club exists to enhance excellence in varsity athletics and the student athlete experience, as well as help fund assistant coaches, international travel, and operating expenses. So you can head over to whitmanblues.com to make a donation or become a member. So again, just in a time where we're seeing some tremendous success across the athletic programs, Whitman, men's soccer winning the Northwest Conference Championship outright, women's basketball back to the NCAAs, a lot of expectations heading into the spring for a bunch of the programs. The golf programs we didn't mention, but they're right in the thick of the race on both the men's and women's side to try and win the conference titles there. George Fox standing in the way on the women's side again, kind of that's kind of the theme of the week. George Fox University Bruins, but we're got a lot of good things happening across the athletic department right now, and so want to make sure that everyone's aware of everything going on, as well as to thank those that are supporting the program in a variety of ways, whether that's with your time, your money, or your talents. We greatly appreciate it all the way across the board.
Absolutely, and it's that transition time of year from winter into spring sports. So baseball for Whitman well underway, now entering the third weekend. You mentioned the George Fox theme coming, which is the first home game for the Blues this weekend, a three-game set due to start this Saturday, March 7th. But before we fully get to that, I know we keep teasing the Bruins part. We do want to kind of go back and revisit a couple weekends ago. The Blues were down in Southern California and had a four-game stretch. A couple of teams, the Redlands and Pomona Pitzer, and just wanted to review that one. The Blues did have a weekend off this past weekend, so just want to get caught up on that and see how we can transition into the home opener this Saturday. But Stephen, not the best of trips down to Southern California for the Blues, but they're able to salvage the last game between the Redlands and Pomona Pitzer.
They did, and before we even jump into the root game parts of all of this, Cody, I don't know if you had a chance to catch my interview with Halen because I did ask him about this. Redlands has one of the most bizarre warning tracks for their facility that I have ever seen in my entire life. Did you get a chance to look at that?
I saw the video clip part of it that you mentioned, and I think uh, I believe I don't know I forget what the word you used was, but bizarre I think is a very good word if that's the one you did use. It's almost like a mini half pipe out in right
That's a
field,
great
right
way.
center field. It's a for those that want to go take a look at it, either via picture or any video you can find online, from about the right field foul pole to just close to dead center, it is basically a half pipe going up to the wall. Um, I would say it's not very comparable, but the closest thing I can think of was down in Houston. The Astros had that hill in center field for all those years before they closed it up. Just imagine that, except maybe cut in half and spread across half the outfield. Definitely one of the more interesting warning tracks and outfields you'll come across in NCAA athletics.
Yeah, it makes me almost think of like a snow bunker, almost like if you're having a snowball fight when you were a kid, you kind of build it up and it just sort of kind of takes that natural shape to where you can kind of like lay behind it. And that's sort of what it looks like if you were to try and throw snowballs over the fence. But one of the darndest things I think I've ever seen. That one caught me off guard the first time that I saw that on video. So it did make me chuckle. But you mentioned, yeah, bit of a tough trip to Southern California and taking on Redlands. Ended up dropping all three games that were played against Redlands. Now, they were able to salvage the game against Pomona Pitzer on Sunday, February 22nd. Again, we're already 10 days removed. The program has moved past these days mentally, but first time that we've had a chance to kind of sit back and revisit, but did have a chance to take down Pomona Pitzer, ended up winning the last game on Sunday by a score of 14-8. But early conversations kind of both with Chavi as well as Halen. I think that these first two weekends and playing, two game Saturday, two game Sunday, these 4 game weekends, a bit of a slog to really try and work through in the early parts of the year in terms of just making sure the body's ready, making sure the arms are ready to go, and sort of understand what they're getting into. And it was great to see them win the last game of the weekend on Sunday. But man, I think that more than anything, what we've seen is that the baseball season is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint, and I think that we kind of saw that early on.
And yeah, absolutely. The conference tournament's not coming up in later in March. We still have 2 full months to get through a conference play, which again starts this Saturday. But yeah, bit of a tough time down there to say the least. A couple of the first 3 games or the first 2 games rather versus the Redlands, just outdone by an offensive explosion from the Redlands. The first game, Whitman losing 16-7, and then dropping the second game 16-2, actually getting run ruled there. A new rule implemented. Had a better go of it in the game three. Actually, was tied going into the ninth, but lost it on a walk off there in a 10-9 outing. And I think what you were seeing was kind of a flip of what we were talking about preseason wise, Stephen. We were thinking, we're going to be able to lean on this pitching that was returning for Whitman and, see how the offense develops around some of the key guys returning and, the Halen Knotts of the world. But what you saw was, just some rough outings. Russ Peterson on that first game only going 4 innings, giving up 7 or 8 runs, 7 of those earned on 12 hits, just 2 strikeouts to 4 walks. So the command a little bit of an issue there. And then you jump into the next one and more of a bullpen game. Dylan Colvin gets the start, only makes it a third of the inning when he gives up 4 runs, 2 walks, 2 hits. So just some tough starting pitching there, but a little bit of a bounce back on that third game against Redlands with Ollie Brown. Still gave up 6 runs, all of them earned, and also 4 walks and 2 strikeouts, but was able to go 5 innings. So kind of keeping Whitman in the game there for the offense to kind of come back in. But we really just didn't see that pitching that we were expecting until we got to the Pomona Pitzer series. So kind of what you said earlier, everyone's still getting warmed up, still getting used to the routines and everything. But offense was off to a fairly good start, but the pitching looks like it'll need to bounce back here for this home opening weekend.
Yeah, and it certainly does, reinforce, I think, the importance of having the quality starting pitching and ensuring that it can really carry, in terms of helping the bullpen out over the course of an entire season, being able to rely on, especially, Russ and Ollie, but I think Jack too really kind of showed in his first couple of outings, that he's going to play an important role in this rotation as well. But just the idea of like you have to be able to give some length to the bullpens because then it really lets the coaching staff attack with a game plan of how they want to deploy guys. At the point that you have a starter leave early, that's when you start to run into problems because then you're using guys earlier in the game than you maybe want to. Then you start to work into situations where you have guys put in spots that maybe they're not as familiar with. And while the beginning of the season is certainly the time to try and figure out all of those computations and sort of situations that you do or don't want to put guys in, exposing them to certain situations, there is something to be said that this is the time of year to do it. But I think it also reinforces as you get into conference play the importance of not putting your guys in some of those situations and really trying to set them up for success.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things we did talk about in terms of that bullpen was we were still very unsure of who's going to be those reliable arms coming out. And I think they're getting a bit of a baptism by fire here early on, having to come in a lot earlier than anticipated. But this could be good for the long term. And, the season that we talked about, could be a good way for them to really, get some experience this early on against some really good opponents that could help them down the line when you're looking for those key wins on the road late in Northwest Conference play. As we look towards, the conference tournament, which, we'll start looking at that probably towards the end of March, early April. But these are key moments here to use that experience and build on them to help once we do get into the meat of the schedule here. So I think, this could be a blessing in disguise, but obviously not the way that the team wanted to open up down in Southern California. But that said, we talked about the offense a little bit. We know what Halen Ott is capable of. We've seen it the last 2 years with him. And we kept asking what is going to be like those pieces around him. And you're starting to see some of those come through. Most in particular, you look at a guy, Landon Runyon, who's off to a scorching hot start. He's got a 393 average in these first 8 games, all of them starts, posting a 122 OPS. Not too bad for landing the first year on campus for him. So pieces like that, I think, are going to fall into place as we get, a little bit more into March, I think, and Coach Kitamura and staff start seeing like what the regulars are going to look like. I think that'll start helping out. So hopefully those questions get answered sooner rather than later. But yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on not only the offensive pieces that are coming in, but also how does that pitching get firmed up and reassured to what we're used to seeing out of these Whitman Blues from a pitching standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And to sort of reiterate that point as well, right? Like of the Blues have now played 8 games so far in the young year, currently sitting at 3-5. The only Northwest Conference team to have not played a conference game yet. That'll change this weekend. But in just 8 games, we're already in a situation where only 3 players have started all 8 games. So, this early part of the season has very much also I don't think it can be overstated in the sense it's about figuring out what you've got, what works and what combinations, who's doing things the right way, who's, translating the things that they're doing in practice and in the off season, taking those into game situations and executing at the same level. And clearly the coaching staff is not afraid to use all of the guys at their disposal, and a quick count as I'm looking at it, you've got double digits of guys that have made at least one start already on the season. And so I think you're going to see a lot more change of the lineup, especially in terms of, who's going to hit in front of Landon and Halen, who's going to hit behind Landon and Halen. I think you can kind of probably take those two along with Miskowski lapping as sort of your middle of the lineup guys, whether that's 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, but then kind of seeing in front and behind them, how is TJ going to fit into that conversation? How is Nate going to fit into that conversation? I think that there's a lot to be said that we're going to see a lot of different combinations to sort of see where that one comes and gets dialed in. And when you talk about, trying to get dialed in, it's actually been great to see that not only healthy but playing well. Nick Tang has really been off to a great start so far this year too. He, started in 6 games up to this point, hitting 400 with 4 doubles, 2 runs driven in, but 12 bags. In addition to the ability to walk 5 times, on base, literally 500%. He's getting on base every other time that he comes to the plate. That's what you need in front of guys that are going to hit the ball and put it in play and try and drive runners in. Is you got to have guys there. And so you kind of look at, I think that that's a good example of, potentially somebody that's setting themselves up to try and hit at the top of the lineup day in, day out.
Yeah, and we saw Nick Tang last year, but we thought he was transitioning mostly to a guy coming out of the bullpen, not a guy in with Nick there that had a lot of offensive opportunities. Granted, the depth chart ahead of him didn't allow for that, mostly with the veteran laden offense last year. But if you get a guy like Nick Tang going, in that middle infield, or a guy could play third base. Ability to, be an everyday guy. That's just one more piece that you don't have to worry about. And hopefully the rest of the guys fall into place. But, even look at a guy like Jonah Chang, who we saw quite a bit last year as well. He's hitting 318 in 7 games that he's played, couple doubles in already. So, there's definitely some talent, some pieces there. Again, we're just now entering March, so there's a long way to go here, but hopefully starting to get some answers to those questions that we had as well early in the season. But again, I think it's going to be how does that pitching kind of go and how does it work for Whitman? Because we've been used to seeing guys on Whitman staff go 6 innings, 7 innings, 8 innings, if not nine sometimes. And, your first weekend out there past Warner Pacific, you didn't have a guy go more than 5 innings. So definitely a little bit of a different kind of a strategy going in terms of, what does the staff look like? And it'll be interesting to see once we hit conference play how those change.
Well, and to that point as well, right? The when it comes to pitching, I think it's no doubt, and we've seen it, that there clearly seems to be some swing and miss from the arms here in 2026. So far up to this point, in 66 innings combined as a staff, the Whitman arms have gone on and they have struck out 65 guys. So basically averaging almost a strikeout an inning, which to do as an entire staff is a pretty high mark to try and achieve and maintain. The concern for me right alongside of that is 60 walks in 66 innings. And that when you talk about that hurts your ability to end innings earlier than you're supposed to. That hurts your ability to extend guys into a next inning. That hurts your ability to, keep your defense in a rhythm to help yourself from a fielding perspective. And so I think that's really going to be the mark to sort of continue to watch moving forward is the walks are going to have to be cut down for these guys across the board and rely more defensively on balls getting put in play, especially once you get to Borleski. It just, you have a big outfield, take advantage of it and make teams really try and put the bat on the ball as opposed to issuing free passes.
No, you're right, absolutely. And to kind of go on top of those 60 walks that you mentioned, already 13 hit by pitches allowed by Whitman pitchers as well. So not a stat where you want to be very high in both the walks and the hit by pitch. It's just like you said, free guys on base, and anytime that happens, everything just changes and puts more pressure on the defense, and the pitcher feels more pressure to get guys out. But I think you're right. Once you start entering these next couple weeks, start really trusting the defense. Let's find the zone and really make the hitters, work for it. Because like you said, the strikeouts have been there so far, almost a strikeout per inning, which is a great rate to be at. But if you can cut those walks close to half, and be effective and not letting extra bases or guys on base, you could be in a real change in terms of just your pitching statistics right there to really help out your offense.
It makes such a difference, especially at the collegiate level when you're using aluminum bats in the NCAA, and you've got guys that can hit and put a bat on the ball more often than not. When you're just issuing free passes and putting guys on base, it puts so much more stress on catchers. It puts so much more stress on arms. If just don't do it. Public service announcement from the Diamond Report here, Cody. Just don't do it. Don't issue free passes. They might be our biggest pet peeve on game days as well. Anyway, we just issue that as a general generic public service announcement. Don't walk, guys.
Yep. Trust your defense, don't walk, throw strikes, easier said than done, but that is,
Absolutely.
our unofficial motto. So, um, but with all the stuff we talked about with getting swept by the Redlands, the Blues were able to end the SoCal trip on a high note. They did take the Pomona Pitzer game 14-8 down there. So a good way to end the trip on. And to go back to a couple items, you talked about starting pitching. A newcomer to the rotation, Jack Finn, had a fairly solid outing, 5 innings, just giving up 2 runs on 3 hits. Did strike out 6, did walk 5. So again, what we just talked about, eliminating those walks, but was able to keep that offense in the game. And the Blues in this game, if I read correctly, I believe hit 2 grand slams that powered their way to their 14 runs. One by Landon Runyon, and I believe the other one was by Jonah Chang as well. Yes, they're in the third inning. So, a great way to end the weekend down in SoCal, and maybe a jumping point or a springing into hopefully more to come for this upcoming weekend where they can build off of that.
And it was a testament as well because that's right on the heels of being walked off in the bottom of the ninth against Redlands the night before. So it certainly you see plenty of situations where a team might come out pretty flat and kind of devastated, having lost, the third game of 4 games in 3 days, end of a 3 game set against Redlands. Now we have to play the one more against Pomona before we get on the road and everything that goes into that, especially early in the year, especially with a relatively young team, it goes underestimated or maybe occasionally flies under the radar. Like the logistics for the first time and for Whitman and for much of the Northwest Conference, it's really only once a year, maybe twice, that you have the chance to get on the plane and go through the whole process of flying down to Southern California, playing on the road, getting used to the hotels and pregame timelines and everything else that goes into that. It sounds silly maybe at times, but it makes a huge difference, especially for these kids that are also balancing the academic component to it as well, of missing that much class. It makes a difference. And so to be able to respond, I think, on that Sunday morning and bounce back and really kind of take it to Pomona Pitzer really was a good thing to help build on heading back home after the week off.
Yep. So, a good overall win there. Great way to end the trip. And, like I said, got answer for what your third starter is going to look like in Jack Finn, able to build off that performance. And other than other than one arm towards the end of the game out of the bullpen, a very solid bullpen game as well. So, little building blocks that you can build off of to go, like we said, into conference play here, very big. So, and with a weekend off and, getting some guys back in the swing of things, and everybody probably loosened up by now by the warm Southern California weather, should help start the conference season this weekend against George Fox fairly well, and we'll see how that goes. But what do these George Fox games entail, Stephen? What do we see from a report coming in that way for the Blues home opener coming this Saturday?
A fantastic question, Cody. Is again, we do get set for the three games against the George Fox Bruins this weekend, getting to open up home at Borleski Stadium, and the forecast is showing some sunshine. Say that five times fast for anybody trying to do that one at home. The sunshine should be shining. There's another one. I'm setting myself up for failure here. It's supposed to be sunny this weekend, Cody, and I'm pretty happy about that here for early March. Kind of a mild winter in the Pacific Northwest by and large. And so, seeing some what projected to be mid 60s on Saturday for the doubleheader might be an earlier time for us to have the t-shirts out than we're used to uh, at this point in the year. But it's going to be fun. So George Fox University comes in currently sitting at the bottom of the Northwest Conference, just in terms of record. Whitman is the only one that doesn't have a game. Everybody else is either 2-1 or 1-2 in conference. George Fox 1-2 in conference, 3-7 overall so far here early in 2026. But it was a similar story a year ago for the Bruins. They did finish in last season overall in terms of conference standings. The Blues had gone on the road last year and swept George Fox in Newburgh. So also probably a little bit of desire to get some revenge. But last year, the Bruins 12-28 overall, 6-18 in conference play. So it's a team that's certainly trying to rebuild and kind of try and recapture its identity. George Fox baseball, long history of a lot of success in that program, but maybe even has fallen a little bit on tough times as of lately, but going to be trying to turn that around. So far this year, they opened their season in playing in Piedmont, and actually it's in Georgia. Got three games in Georgia, lost those 12-2, 10-0, and 5-1, including against the number 7 team in the country, Lynchburg. Was the one they lost 10-0. And then turned around and welcomed Centenary for 4 games to Newburgh, where they played 4 games and they split that 4-game set with Centenary winning 5-2 and 4-1, losing games 9-3 and 6-2 before losing at home to Linfield. They lost 2 of 3. They did win on Sunday by a score of 6-3. So it's early, but it does look like that maybe the Bruins are still in a little bit of a rebuild.
Well, if you're the Blues, coming off, your weekend off, and you're seeing this opportunity here where you open against maybe a team like you said that is rebuilding, a good chance to really, take at least 2 out of 3, if not look for an opening conference weekend sweep, and figure out the pitching a little bit more, and maybe get some confidence in some guys, um, for that to be able to build on as we get into the conference play here in the next 2 weeks. So, maybe it's a good opportunity to play around with the lineup a little bit, but also kind of set more regulars like we were talking about Just three guys so far in the everyday lineup so far. So hopefully can pin a couple more of those down, but maybe get some confidence or some stability back for Ollie and for Russell as well, just from a starting standpoint, so that everything kind of like goes back into more of like a smooth rhythm from a game standpoint. A little bit more what we were used to last year. Russ probably going at least 6 or 7 innings and only giving up a couple runs here, and being that steady Eddie, and then Ollie just as well for that second game can come in and provide very similar stuff there with what he's got. So could be a very good weekend for the Blues, just again, projection wise, based off of what they've been able to do so far and what the Bruins have coming in. But that's the hope there. And obviously, you always want to get off to a good start at home. And it should be a little bit better, sleeping in the own beds and getting to the ballpark in that routine you're familiar with. So could be a good opportunity on deck here for Whitman this weekend.
Yeah, so George Fox, led by head coach Kevin Koppel, who's now going into his seventh year at the helm of the program, but has been with George Fox since 2007. So kind of similar to Coach Kitamura, has really been around that Bruin program for a long time, has seen plenty of success in his time with the Bruins in general. And so we know that it's capable. Like, Fox has the ability to kind of turn it around like that. It really is. We have spent our time sort of singing the praises of the conference top to bottom over the last several years, and it still holds true. It really doesn't feel as though at any given point in time that anybody in this conference couldn't go from worst to first. It just takes that right recruiting class. I mean, Whitworth's a perfect example. A few years ago, it was Whitworth that was at the bottom, and now they've been near or at the top the last couple of years, almost in an immediate turnaround behind CJ Perry. So there's a lot of very capable coaching in this conference. There's a lot of talent in this conference, and I think that you're going to see kind of a lot of that. But it really seems like in the early part this year, it's Brennan Bates, the sophomore from San Clemente, that has really sort of emerged as kind of that breakout player for the Bruins. That if they're going to be really taking that next step, that it's going to kind of be alongside of him. So far this year, Bates hitting 316. He has 3 home runs already, a 789 slug, and an OPS at 1224. For a young man that only started a handful of games his freshman year, it really seems like he's taken this opportunity to start every day. His sophomore season has really ran with it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's you're gonna have those, like you said, those years where those down years. And so, in it it's just a testament to the conference as a whole, the depth of it, and some rise some years, some fall, and like we said, this might be the down years for George Fox um as they look to rebuild. But you also don't want to take them lightly. Like you said, there's still some very productive players on that team, and you don't want to take them lightly coming in to a series like this. You really want to come out focused, and at least get those first two Saturdays so that you go into game three with house money, so to speak. And I think, you mentioned the longevity of the Bruins head coach, and we mentioned it with Coach Kitamura being around the program for the last 15, 16 years. And, he's going to have his guys and his staff ready once they come out Saturday morning, that pregame routine where I think he's going to drill home, this is an opportunity to really, brush off that SoCal trip and build off that Pomona Pitzer game to really take command of this series, and it's sitting right there for them. And the other part with this schedule too is while we're still early, it can turn easily to where you're halfway through the season, and if you haven't put those pieces together, you could be in a spot in the conference where you're really fighting just to get into the tourney weekend. The top 4 teams out of 9 teams do make it, but as we've seen every year, it's been a jumbled mess. So you kind of circle these weekends on the calendar as like this is the opportunity to take at least 2 or 3, if not sweep, to really set yourself up for a good start to the season.
And we're super excited to have a chance to do that. Again, you have an opportunity to join Cody and I all weekend long, as we'll be calling the action from Borleski Stadium this weekend. Doubleheader Saturday, first pitch scheduled to take place at noon, and then the single game on Sunday scheduled again, first pitch at noon out at Borleski Stadium. Admission is free to home baseball games on campus, so you're more than welcome to come down. Invite everybody that you might have with you to come join you and take in the action at Borleski Stadium. We do want to make mention that dogs are not allowed at Borleski, so please make sure you leave your furry friends at home. We don't want to have them have to get kicked out of the park or anything else happen on that front. But we certainly look forward to hopefully having everyone that can't make it out to the ballpark to join us on Flow Sports, Flow College, as we will be bringing the action. We've got some technical improvements to our streams this year, so we're hoping, knock on wood, Cody, we're not going to be running into any sort of issues as we've upgraded some of the internet access in the press boxes for us to make sure that the broadcasts are consistent in quality all season long. So we're excited to have an opportunity to call baseball once again here in 2026, and alongside of that for us too, Cody, is the Blues buzzwords that we like to incorporate into our broadcast. So if you ever have any sort of term or word that you would want to see if you could find for us to sneak into the broadcast, a little bit of Easter eggs for those that are joining us here on the Diamond Report all season long. We like to have a little bit of a challenge, over the course of not only one baseball game, but certainly three baseball games in a day and a half period. Or, we were just talking before we got on the air too of we've got a handful of double headers at home as well this year on Sundays. So there'll be some 4 game weekends this upcoming year, and occasionally we have been known to veer off topic at times, and so that we like to have some fun, and so that'll be part of the action. And so if you want to join us in those conversations, you're welcome to do so. Send emails with questions, thoughts, concerns, or add to our list of buzzwords that you want to see us sneak in over the course of the year. You can email whitmanathletics@gmail.com is, I believe, the email address. John Barry will help us out here in post-op and make sure he puts that on the screen. So if I said the wrong email address, check the one on the screen. And John Barry, our sport communications director, who also produces us, big shout out to him and all the work that he has to do behind the scenes to help make all of this a reality. That we get that taken care of. So yeah, we love to have the interaction. People like to come up and chat with us. We welcome it. We love to have a chance to talk with folks on game days. Sometimes even between innings, we'll have some conversations with the folks sitting in front of us at the press box in Borleski, and it keeps it fun for us too. We like to engage in the conversation and just talk about baseball. I think that's sort of one of the lost parts, I think, over the years, is just we want to make this accessible to everybody, whether it's somebody that's really watching at this level for the first time, or somebody that's an expert to the industry and to the game and wants to have a high level conversation. I think we both welcome the opportunity to do either.
And it doesn't even have to be, Whitman Blues baseball, which obviously we'll talk plenty of, but you know, just this weekend alone as an example, the World Baseball Classic is kicking off Friday, I believe, is the first game with, I believe, games all weekend as well. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. So I'm sure we'll bring that up. And, obviously spring training baseball going on right now, and, really getting
Yes.
into the nit and gritty of that and seeing how teams are going to be shaping up this year. A lot of the minor league guys getting a chance to show what they are capable of as well. And it's a baseball packed weekend, or a couple weekends coming up here. As after this weekend, the Blues will also host University of Puget Sound a week after this coming weekend. But we'll check on that a little bit further down the road. But more so, just mentioning the back-to-back home weekends coming up. And God, Stephen, before you know it, we'll be talking about possible brackets for the March Madness running here, not only for the men's but the women's as well, at the Division 1 level. We mentioned the Whitman Blues Division 3 will be kicking off later this week. So it's a packed sports schedule March wise, so plenty to talk about, and we're looking forward to it. It's just getting started.
It it 100% is, and we're absolutely thrilled to be bringing it to you again. For those that have an opportunity to join us this weekend, if you come out to the stadium, should be a good time. Out first pitch at 12 o'clock on both Saturday and Sunday, as we welcome the visiting George Fox University Bruins to the ballpark for 3 games as Whitman officially opens up its Northwest Conference action. And then also We'll be doing it a couple of weekends in a row. As the following weekend will be the University of Puget Sound coming to town for four. So a couple of weekends back to back here in early March where we'll be playing at the friendly confines of Borleski Stadium, historic Borleski Stadium. We'll get to fill in the listening audience plenty more about Borleski and the friendly confines, as it were, coming up soon enough. But yes, we're certainly excited, Cody, not only about the college baseball season having officially kicked off and gotten going. But yes, spring training is now officially in full gear. World Baseball Classic starts this. I actually believe I think Wednesday is the first official game. United States has its first game on Friday in prime time, and it'll be rocking and rolling. We'll have baseball everywhere all the time, and no, nothing brings more music to my ears than that.
I know. I can't wait for it either, and I already got a taste myself. I was lucky enough to go down to Arizona for some spring training last week, and there's something I was telling you about it while I was down there, but there's something about, just the sun on your face at a ballpark with, all the noises around, all the noises, the crack of the bat, everything. Just it's a great look into just like, your summertime memories and just looking forward to the season ahead. It's a great time of year, and we're looking forward to it, especially.
So one of the controversial things happening at the big league level is the new implementation of the automatic ball strike challenges. Getting to see it in spring training for the first time, what was your reaction?
It's very quick in terms of from when the challenge happens. I think it maybe takes 10 seconds per challenge. It's quick, it's efficient. I have really liked the addition so far. I like the rules around it. You get two, and you get to keep those two as long as you get your challenges right. But as soon as you miss two, then you're done. So I think there's going to be a lot of strategy for holding on to those until probably after the fifth inning, unless you just see something egregious early on that you think is going to sway the game. Um, I've seen the most success from the catcher standpoint. And then right behind that has been the hitter. The pitchers, not so much. I think they have a little bit more of an askewed version of the strike zone at times. That's just, I think, pitchers as a whole. That's nothing against pitchers. Um, but what I've seen in just the brief interaction is that catchers and hitters have a very good sense of the strike zone there. But yeah, I've really liked it so far. The visual on the scoreboard helps for everybody in the stadium. Um, I think it'll be a great tool this year, and I think there's just going to be some playing. I think you're going to see in March and April. I think you're going to see a lot of strategy in terms of maybe we're going to be aggressive with this early, but then once you get down to those July, August, September games, you're probably going to hold on to those challenges probably like I mentioned the sixth inning, and then that's where like okay, this is really where we want to come into play here for that.
I've actually been pleasantly surprised by the number of pitchers that have the self-awareness to be like, I can't use this. I think everything's a strike. Catchers fool me. I can't, I'm not going to challenge. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to touch it. Leave it for the hitters. I'm not going to do it. That's made me actually really smile because it does show some self-awareness to know, yeah, I have a distorted view of this. It's also been very interesting to hear how different teams are going to approach it. There clearly seem to be some that, it'll be like I think the Giants, Torey Lavola has talked about it being something that exclusively comes from the dugout of not leaving it to hitter, pitcher, catcher, but it just being a dugout decision. I've heard others where they'll be kind of like stealing, where like some guys will have the green light, some guys will have a yellow light, some guys will have a red light as it relates to being able to challenge a pitch or not. Do you allow it in any situation or do you wait till certain situations? I think the strategy that'll come out of it will actually be a pleasant surprise. I know more and more people are getting frustrated with some of the automation that's coming to the game from pitch clocks and bigger bases and just things that are changing the game fundamentally. But even as someone that I kind of consider myself kind of an old school baseball fan, but I think a lot of these changes have actually made the game a little more dynamic again in ways that maybe had become a little more stagnant. And I think from that perspective, it's something that I really enjoy because it puts a little more thought and a little more strategy into the whens, whats, and wheres of how you deploy some of this stuff.
I mean, yeah, I think it's really going to help in that instance. So, no, I had nothing but good reviews off of that in our time down there with some of our folks here from Walla Walla. So, yeah, overall good feedback. But yeah, I think you'll see a lot more catchers and hitters using it. I think you'll see less and less pitchers use it. Um, some teams had really good success rate. Other teams lost it within the first two innings. So, definitely going to be, I think, playing around with it for April and March, just to kind of see, what is the best practices. But it should be a fun thing to keep an eye on throughout the year. And um, no, I've been encouraged from what I've seen down there. So should be even more interesting once we hit a regular season here just in later this month.
It should be, but our eyes are set on this weekend, Cody, as we are just days away from finally getting to put our own eyes live and in person on these Whitman Blues as they welcome the George Fox University Bruins into Walla Walla and Borleski Stadium to officially open the home portion of the schedule here in 2026. So we're going to go ahead and sign off from there. For those that are not tired of our voices yet, glad to hear it. Because again, you can join us this weekend as Cody and I will be on the call, getting you all of the action for Whitman baseball at home all season long, and very much looking forward to it. Cody, anything else you want to add before we sign off here today?
Just looking forward to baseball, not only for Whitman, but like we mentioned, the World Baseball Classic and everything else in between. I'm sure we'll be keeping an eye on all three with spring training as well and providing updates all weekend. So should be a great weekend. Should be a good time at Borleski.
It sure will be. And again, feel free to get a hold of us in the show via any of the Whitman Athletics social media channels or via email. Again, John Barry, shout out to you for getting that on the screen. WhitmanBlues.com is also again the place to go all season long, including current team schedules and student athlete features. And you can follow Whitman Athletics and feel free to send a message or a DM on X, Instagram, Facebook, or leave those comments on YouTube. And we'll be sure to try and check the comments, respond to them, and as well as make sure that we get all of the questions or thoughts or words that you want to see us try and incorporate into a weekend. Again, we please keep it appropriate. We'll put that disclaimer in, but it should be a lot of fun. So come join us with the fun Flow College this weekend if you can't make it out to the ballpark and enjoy some sunshine. But until then, everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Diamond Report.